So we are doing this web class on the spiritual implications of the Guru Purnima, that is the lunar eclipse, which is also called Guru Purnima, on July 27th. Now, I say that it's also called Guru Purnima because this full moon that happens in the month of Ashada each year is also called Guru Purnima. And this means the full moon of the guru, the full moon of our teacher or of the teachers. And this every year is the full moon that is supposed to align us with our teachings and our gurus. And it's the day each year that is the most conducive for us really getting the point and getting our teaching straight and really understanding what our teachers mean, what their teachings mean, and how to really imbibe that grace. Because most of the time we don't get it. We're kind of in our own world and we're sort of, half listening, half not listening. And each year, this day of Guru Purnima comes and it's the full moon of the guru. So what does that mean? The full moon of the guru? Well, it's in the month of Ashada. And again, you have to understand that the months in Indian culture are soli lunar months. They're not calendar months like the Gregorian calendar, January, February, March. No, the month begins when sun and moon come together. This is why I always do these new moon and full moon forecasts. The month begins when sun and moon come together. Then the midway point, there are 15 days then on the waxing part of the moon, which is called Shukla Paksha, as the moon is waxing. Then you have Purnima, the full moon. Then you have 15 days of the waning moon, which is called Krishna Paksha. These are the months in Vedic thinking, or in Indian culture, in Vedic culture. And this is what Vedic timekeeping is really about. All the way back into the Vedic times. And they always measured these, cycles and rhythms with the sidereal sky. So again, you have some people talking about tropical zodiac. This just makes no sense when it comes to how they were measuring the months. The months are even named after these sidereal portions of the sky. Ashada, the month of Ashada, is stated as such because it's likely that the full moon is going to happen in one of the Ashadas, either Purva Ashada or Uttar Ashada. So they name the month Ashada because the new moon comes together around Gemini or early Cancer. That's when the new moon happens. And then 15 days later, we have the full moon. It's usually in Sagittarius or early Capricorn, which is where you have Purva Ashada or Uttar Ashada. That's usually the nakshatra of Guru Purnima. It's usually Purva Ashada or Uttar Ashada, and it's usually in Sagittarius. So Guru Purnima usually happens with the full moon in Sagittarius each year. That's usually the sign that it's in. But this year, it's actually in Capricorn, and it's this eclipse that we keep talking about. So I've spoken quite a bit about the eclipse socially and spiritually and personally and, in a lot of those ways, and how to really deal with that intense energy and how to understand it. But I didn't really mention this quality of Guru Purnima, which is extremely important because it's the day to really listen to your teachers, follow your teachings, and understand really understand what those teachings mean. And this is the important part. So on this intense day, which is July 27th in the West, but we're in it now, because we're already experiencing the Poornima Tithi. It's already started even now. So even now we're in the Purnima Tithi. Right now. So it's the full moon now, and it'll culminate in the lunar eclipse tomorrow, which actually happens as the Tithi changes from Uttar Ashada into Shravana. So I want to describe the spiritual energy of these nakshatras, especially Uttar Ashada to Shravana. So Uttar Ashada literally means later victory. It literally means the things that guarantee our later victory, okay? And it's ruled by the deities called the Vishwa Devas, which means the universal gods. And these universal gods have to do with things like karma, which is action, kala, which is time, dharma, which is truth and righteousness, and kama, which is desire, to name a few. And these universal forces or universal principles and how well we work with them and how focused we are and how we utilize them shows the things that manifest in our life. It shows the great victories that we have. And by victory, it just means where you're victorious over your inertia and your resistance and your problems. Because we all have these ideas that we're going to do something. Oh, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to do that thing. I'm going to whatever it is. And we have this idea, but then do we actually accomplish it? Do we actually achieve a victory? And again, there's something that stands between all the things that you want and the things you imagine and the things you actually accomplish. There's a space, there's a resistance. And when you're victorious over that resistance, then you accomplish your goal. Okay? And this is what Uttar Ashada is really about. It's that energy of taking right action aligned with truth for a long period of time and elevating your desires and having the desire for something wonderful and beautiful. And when all of these things come together, you're victorious and you win, you accomplish your goal. You also want to understand that any goal that you accomplish, anything that you manifest, and again, I'm talking about big things that also bring a sense of meaning and value to your life. Every time you've accomplished something like that, it's been because these things have lined up. And especially when you take the highest good that you want to accomplish in your life and you actually bring it about. Like I'll just say like with myself, now that I'm making a living as an astrologer, okay? That certainly wasn't always the case. And it didn't start till I was in my early 40s, right? It took quite a while before I, overcame. It's inside stuff. It's internal things. You have to first align with a sense of hope and purpose and belief you can do it. And then you start taking action and you persevere and you do all those things. And then over time, it finally works out. It doesn't work out somehow. It works out because you found the thing that was truthful. You worked on it and you did all those things. So this is the section of the sky where Sagittarius becomes Capricorn. Most of the nakshatra is in Capricorn. It's from 2640 of Sagittarius to 10 degrees of Capricorn. And again, I'm just going to repeat it again because there are people, and I repeat these things so that those of you who still somehow are confused about, well, are we supposed to use tropical and all that? Look, this is purely the sidereal zodiac, purely the Indian Vedic astrological wisdom for thousands of years. No one ever thought of tropical zodiac for these reasons. Because once you start to really look at the energy of these nakshatras, you see they line up perfectly with the zodiac signs, okay? So this is the nakshatra where we take the inspiration and purpose of Sagittarius, because the first pada of Uttar Ashada, the first section of it, is the last degrees of Sagittarius. So we take that hope of Sagittarius and then we carry that into the commitment and focus and purpose of Capricorn. So again, Uttar Ashada is literally where we take that hope and purpose, or that hope, inspiration, teachings, wisdom from our gurus, from the lineage. And that becomes that's the entry point. That's where Capricorn begins. Capricorn, ruled by Saturn, which is about hard work, focus, determination, humility, reverence, understanding the value of time and commitment and work. So again, anyone who would say that, oh, nakshatras have nothing to do with signs, they're just, I don't know what they're thinking, because it's nothing in Vedic astrology that supports that sort of crazy idea, frankly. With all due respect, it's just, this is why they never did it. It's very clear when you look at nakshatras and how they line up with rashis that it absolutely makes perfect sense. And you see these last degrees of Sagittarius and the beginning of Capricorn as this elevation of taking our teachings and what inspires us and bringing that into focus, commitment, and the long-term things that we build in our life. And that ultimately lead to deeper stillness, peace, and silence within, which is also the higher qualities of Capricorn. Because again, we have to work through all of these things internally, right? It's great to be all inspired by our teachings and our teachers. And again, this is what happens. We get inspired. This is why it's 26 degrees of Sagittarius first with Mula, then Purva Ashada. And then the last part of it is like, okay, now you're going to take this inspiration, but what are you going to do with it? Are you going to let the world of time and resistance and mistakes and all of that, are you going to let that beat you down? Or is that going to be where how your greatness emerges and how you take these things, how you take these things that inspire you and turn them into great structures that endure and that take you deeper into life and that allow you to manifest your highest self or whatever it is that you want. And again, it turns into something that is enduring and valuable for a long time. This is why it says Uttar Ashada, it's that later victory. And and again, it's not a small trivial victory. It's victory over something that was really in your way that you really wanted to accomplish. And again, that's the things of Capricorn. The Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, which shows these things that are of enduring value, that last a long time. See, because the lessons we learned through Saturn, who is the ruler of Capricorn, the lessons we learn from Saturn stick with us forever because they're hard-fought lessons. It's not this little thing. It's how time itself, it's like these wheels in the sky sort of grinding our life. And over long periods of time, we learn these lessons that stick, right? They stick because they've been time tested, battle tested. And we've gotten involved with something, and in spite of our resistance and in spite of all of the problems, we pushed through it. We kept going. We were determined to manifest it and to bring it about, right? So that is Saturn energy and Capricorn energy. So again, this These are big themes right now. Again, we're being tested on a lot of levels, culturally, personally, to really dig deep and find out what those things are that we're worth fighting for. And so this Guru Purnima, most of the Poornima day, today and tomorrow, is in Uttar Ashada Nakshatra, right? But then as the eclipse happens tomorrow, as the eclipse is starting and as the eclipse unfolds, it actually goes into Shravana Nakshatra. So the next nakshatra after Uttar Ashada is Shravana. So I'll scale this back a few hours. So as you can see over here, Shukla Poornima, right? So during this Poornima, this is when we're having the eclipse, right? And you see it's exact eclipse. It's almost exact degrees. And you see in this screen, it says Uttar Ashada. When the moon is at 9:14, it's Uttar Ashada. And then I'll run it forward a couple hours. This is when we're having the full moon and the eclipse. And you see the moon is right on Mars at the same time. So if you're at a point where you can see this lunar eclipse, when you look up in the sky to see the lunar eclipse, you'll also see it next to a big bright Mars. Mars will also be there really bright. So the moon will be dark, 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 blacked out, and then Mars will just be sitting there. So then you go forward. Now you see it changes to Shravana. Now this is local time on the West Coast. So this is tomorrow, July 27th at 12:31 p.m. So the eclipse is still going on, but you can see how it changes from 11:30. It's in Uttar Ashada. Then by 12:30, it's in Shravana, right? And the eclipse is going on at that time because the sun is at 10:36, which actually means that the actual eclipse and the actual full moon, the actual total Poornima, when Poornima is 100%, is Shravana, right? So Shravana literally means hearing, listening to the voice within, listening to the voices within. And again, I want to go back and explain this to you, how the nakshatras have to do with that. You just saw the first nakshatra in Capricorn is Uttar Ashada, which is, again, the commitment based on our hope and purpose, based on the Vishwadevas, the universal principles. We bring that inspiration from Sagittarius into Capricorn. Boom. Then the next thing we have to do is Shravana. If those qualities of Capricorn, which are manifesting big things that endure, if that lesson is going to happen, you see it play out on these three nakshatras. First is we bring the hope in from Sagittarius. Next is we listen. We have to listen to our heart. We have to check in and say, is this really the thing? Because there's been many times where I thought I was committing to the thing and I was all jacked up on something that I thought was hopeful and I thought was what I wanted, and then it's not. So when we're disconnected from our heart, we might create something, but then ultimately, once we check back in, it ain't what we really thought it was. We weren't listening. And I don't just mean listening to others. I mean first listening to our own intuition. That's Shravana. Shravana is the power to hear and to listen to others, but especially listen to the rhythm of the cosmos in us as us. It's ruled by Lord Vishnu, who is the maintainer of the universe. And he's the one who sees everything in its proper proportion. Vishnu is also, as Narayan, the Lord of peace, the God of peace. And I literally mean like peace on earth so that we have a stable creation. You know, in the Shivananda ashrams, I'm actually a trained yoga teacher through the Shivananda ashrams worldwide. Every day they say the mantra for peace, and you see it in a lot of their ashrams. Om Namo Narayanaya is that mantra for peace, and it's to bring peace to this world. And that, you know, Narayan is an incarnation, or it's you know, one of the incarnations of Vishnu, and so this Lord Vishnu as peace, and the peace of the universe has a lot to do with Shravana, and a lot to do with the deeper power of Capricorn, which is peace and stillness, silence, devotion through humility and understanding that we need to face our fears, and we need to, you know, overcome the desire to try to control and to be fearful and to hang on to things because we're afraid. So when we check in and we listen, that inner listening is related to Shravana, and it leads to manifesting, because then once we become attuned to our voice and we really listen to the music of our soul, then we get tuned into the soul of everything else, because everything else is just an extension of your oneness. The closer you are to wholeness and your own sense of unity, the more that limited nature starts to resemble the cosmos and the cosmic nature, your cosmic nature. The more you're spinning out on your own stuff, the more disconnected you are from the cosmic unity, and the more you're isolated and alone and on an island. And this is why we're so isolated, alone, and on an island in the West. This is why West, for all the advances in technology, we don't understand the nature of the self. It's all about the glory of the self, the false self, the glory of the ego, me. That is a disconnect from the wholeness of reality that's within you. And this is why it creates so much isolation, sadness, sorrow, depression, grief, because our soul, which never stops being unified with all of existence, is feeling disconnected. So again, this quality of Shravana, of listening and of reverence and silence and stillness, is the gateway to being connected to everything. This is why Shravana Nakshatra is probably in many ways the most attuned to the environment and to others and to what others are saying, to listening to the vibration of the cosmos, not just the words that are said, but the meaning behind the words. And that includes like the body language and the inference and the subtlety and all of the invisible threads that connect everything. And when we're connected to ourselves on that deep level, we're connected to everything else as well, even if we're not aware of it. We just then emanate something that is irresistible. You know, this is why there's like a subtle, irresistible charisma to those who are established in the self. And you can see it in children. You can see it in animals. This is why they have a beauty that we don't have, because there's not the complexity of the ego and the weird inner conflicts and the weird personality that the rest of us are going through. We see that innocence, and that's an openness and an invitation for everything to pour into us. And so these are the higher spiritual qualities of the nakshatra Shravana. Some things that you can do as well. This inner listening is also about, you know, is also related to literally like saying mantras, you know, listening to especially like bhajans and kirtan and beautiful mantras being said. If you have a spiritual guru or a spiritual community, certainly tomorrow on this full moon eclipse, Guru Poornima, you should go into your community and revel in that power. And you can really feel that oneness and unity with your teachers and your gurus tomorrow. And so I wanted to make this update because it's very important in the midst, especially of this one, of this full moon. And, you know, with all the intensity around the Mars, K2, Capricorn, and all the heaviness that we can experience, we don't want to lose sight of the fact that this is also Guru Purnima. And it happens at this extremely important section of the zodiac every year, the full moon in the month of Ashada. Again, it's usually in Sagittarius when the full moon happens. But again, because the Indian calendar is dynamic and it's based on sun, moon coming together, and it's measured with nakshatras, totally sidereal, it usually happens in one of the Ashadas, either Purva Ashada or Uttar Ashada. Now it's at the end of Uttar Ashada and right at the first degree of Shravana. But still, it's where Sagittarius to Capricorn is one of the most important transitions to living a spiritual life, not just believing in spirituality, because again, it's easy to believe in something. Again, this is that quality of Sagittarius, is we all want to believe in something, but does that belief infuse our life? Do we commit to that? Do we bring that about? Do we, you know, is that what it's about? So that's the big lesson here for this full moon, eclipse, and Guru Purnima. So I hope that this was helpful for you to hear. I wanted to make sure this was done. And I'm going to leave it at that. And I hope you have a great rest of the day and a happy Guru Purnima.